the Hall of Famer. His name is Dan Issel, Barry Spears, John Lindo. He's our friend Steve Kornacki. His name's Dan Ellman. David Lovitz hanging out with Jason Bean. His name is James Welsh. Danny Brewer. It's Carlos Morales. Let's go. All right, welcome in. It is the initial edition of BloodHorse Monday. No case of the Mondays around here under the Twin Spires. Hanging out with my friend Sean Collins. I'm Louie Rabaut. Welcome in. Inaugural edition of the show. So much to get into, so much to talk about here as well. Sean, welcome in. Day 89 to go. 89 days till Derby. We're under the Twin Spires. Did you order the weather? Because good job.
I did order the weather, knowing just for this, I didn't want to be sitting out here in the cold while there's no horses out here.
No, that's
so
right.
we made sure we got nice 66 degrees, I think, out here today.
Man, it's
beautiful in Louisville,
It really
Kentucky.
is, man. All right, you're hearing us either, at BloodHorse or any of these kinds of things. Lots of different spots for you to check us out. Is the Facebook page, the Twitter page, BloodHorse.com, BloodHorse Daily, the magazine, all of those things. And of course, you can find me 10 to noon every single weekday here in Louisville on ESPN 680 1057. This will air as a replay show as well over at ESPN.com or ESPNLouisville.com, excuse me. So, Sean, excited to get this going, man. You and I have talked about doing a show, frankly, since the fall. We hung out at, all the way back at last summer at the Haskell as well. So, man, really excited to get this going.
Yeah, it's really exciting to finally get this going. You and I have had a lot of long conversations about horses over the days. So finally now people can actually listen in and see whether or not they agree.
All right. So plenty to get into today. We will look back at the 3 Derby preps that happened this weekend. You did an interview this morning with our guy, Ron Moquett. Trains down there, of course, right now at Oaklawn Park. Speed King on the Derby trail with him as well. We'll hear from him in the middle of the show. And then, of course, we'll talk to our buddy, editorial director there at BloodHorse. His name is Frank Angst. We'll get into different things with him as well. Wrap up the show, talk about that week that is coming up in Tampa, different places that we're going to be watching shows as well. But people don't know us. If they're watching from around the country, those sorts of things, if they don't know Sean Collins, we got to do the thing. What kind of bred are you? What track did you grow up at? Because, by the way, these things don't apply to me, but they apply to everyone I know in horse racing. I'm very jealous. So how'd you grow up in this?
Well, I grew up watching it on TV. So I'm what everybody always says is the goal of some of these big race days, trying to attract new fans. I'm the perfect example of that. Family had no interaction with the horse racing industry growing up. We watched the Triple Crown on TV every year, watching Smarty Jones, Barbaro. That helped me fall in love with the sport. Just started learning more and more about it, to the point where I was watching HRTV and TVG every single night when I got home from school, learning all about the sport, and eventually ended up at the University of Louisville's equine business program. So I've got my way into the industry now, been with BloodHorse for a little over a year, and been loving every minute.
There you go. Am I allowed to admit pet peeves on this show? Is that something we can do on BloodHorse Monday?
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right. I don't like it when people put Pennsylvania bred in their bios. I don't like that. There you go. You're not a horse. Get over it. You're never going to run the Derby. You might like oats, but you're never going to run the Derby. What are we doing?
Don't count me out yet.
Did you see a couple years ago the great article? Someone was pointing out a 4-year-old should run in the Derby because of his form.
Yeah.
Oh, God, what a great moment that was.
Well, you know what the question is? The trick question you want to ask everybody. How many horses have won the Kentucky Derby?
Twice. That's right.
Well, how many horses have won the Kentucky Derby?
To this point, 150.
No, 0.
Oh,
because they're all Colts, Geldings, or Fillies. They're not horses yet until they're 5.
I don't like you at all, Sean Collins, because that was a good question, and I should have gotten that right. How about that? All right. Well, we'll get into the replays now, as we did have a busy weekend of replays as well. We'll head down to South Florida first, where we saw the Grade 3 Holy Bull. Edgar Zayas gets the win here, and I don't know if you're like me, Sean. I have such an affinity for these guys that, Edgar's there all year. He's there in the summer when it's 100 degrees. He's riding on that Tapeta surface, which I have to imagine in the sun gets warm. Yeah. Right? That rubberized surface. I imagine it's got to get a little bit warm. But he's there all year. He really knows the course. He knows the trainers down there. He's willing to do the work. And he gets the win here for trainer Ian Wilkes. I mean, before we go to the replay, who do you think you had before the race? And did it turn out a little bit differently than you thought?
It definitely turned out differently than I thought. You saw where Burnham Square, for one, he was expected to be up on near the pace, and he was able to settle back off of it after a little bit of a slow break. And everybody's kind of watching Ferocious, how he was going to come back off with the Breeders Cup Juvenile performance. Right. And so I think that's a real key to see, where he ended up finishing, as far as we'll talk about Citizen Bowl later, as far as how the juvenile horses, the top 2-year-olds are coming back this year.
There you go. So let's head down to South Florida. This is the replay of the last bit of the Grade 3 Holy Bull.
has clear racetrack now, and he's on the attack. Ferocious sent into action on the far outside is Tappan Street as they round the far turn. The two favorites try to go get Guns Loaded. Guns Loaded has just lost the lead to Ferocious, but he's fighting back toward the inside. Tappan Street is driven and starts to gain 3 wide. Trying to run home from the back is Burning Glory as they race to the first finish line. Louie Sire called on Tappan Street and got a big kick, and he strides to a 1.5 length lead from the outside. Burnham Square tries to bridge the gap, and he starts to gain a bit of ground. Ferocious is flattening out off the turn in the stretch drive. Burnham Square under a full head of steam, and he runs by to take the lead with a 16th to go. Tappan Street is fired, but he's second best to Ian Wilkes trainee Burnham Square, who wins the Holy Bull going away under Ed Gonzalez.
Already participating on the lead at the time they turned for home, and then separated himself.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned that backstretch part. So he gets around the first turn. He's in dead last.
Yeah.
And Zayas, this is where the local guy, I think, makes a difference.
Yeah.
Is he goes ahead and he moves his horse up. And frankly, you're right. It was a tough spot along the rail. Then the horse had to make a second move. So he makes that first move, like you mentioned, from last into mid-pack there. And then eventually has to make that move where he, around the final turn, goes ahead and moves outside. That's a horse with a fair amount of experience, pretty obviously put together horse in that way. So very, very excited about him moving forward. Also fun to just have a guy like Ian Wilkes with another one.
It is, yeah. And, you know, it's such a professional win, too.
It was.
It's the second race with blinkers. Ian Wilkes has said that's made a huge difference because he wouldn't go by horses before. Now he's acting a lot more professional when he's going past horses in the race. And that was just something that, you know, you want to see as a horse is developing, as they're going forward towards the 1.25 miles. You want to see kind of those multiple moves throughout the race. Zayas said before the race that the horse was a little nervous. That's what he looks like, nervous and not 100% prepared. What's it look like when he figures out what's going on?
Yeah, that's a fair point. One of the good things about Gulfstream, too, is on those Saturdays where you know there's going to be a Derby prep, there's not 100,000 people there. Let's be very clear. Nothing's like the Derby or the Preakness or Belmont or whatever. But they do get some experience with the crowd. There are people there. You can hear them in that race call, the high PILO, thanks to the folks at Gulfstream, their YouTube page for that replay. But it does stand out that at least for him in this spot, a little bit of a crowd. If that, like you said, if that's nerves, look out. The sky's the limit for this horse.
Imagine when he finally gets it all together, gets it under wraps, what it's going to be like to see him at those longer distances, fully composed.
A horse we saw in this race that I thought did some good early work, and just tired at the end, coming off of a layoff, was Ferocious.
Yeah.
I thought he looked very good, frankly. We might see him again, of course, moving forward toward the Florida Derby there on that Gulfstream path to the Derby. I think I'll bet him next time he runs. I think I saw enough that he'll be back, especially when he gets second in the form cycle.
Well, the thing with the Breeders' Cup when he ran in that race was it seemed like he was a little unsettled early. It seemed like he wasn't necessarily enjoying being off the pace as much, but then he still was able to mount a rally enough to move up forward towards the end. This time, at the beginning, again, he looked a little unrelaxed in the early stages, but I think that's something that as he continues going on will be something that he gets more used to. He'll be able to settle off the pace. I'm not giving up on him yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think we saw several in this race that could move forward and be even better. Of course, the Florida Derby, one of the two best predictors in the modern era, at least, of who will go on to win the Kentucky Derby. But it's been a couple of years since we had a Florida Derby winner cross the finish line first, but we will see if we can reverse that this year. Another place that's been a long time since we had a Derby winner is up at Aqueduct on Long Island. Of course, the Withers was this weekend. Manny Franco flopped mounts here and was kind of the giveaway here as he goes ahead and wins aboard Captain Cook. Sean, can you name the last Wood Memorial winner to win the Kentucky Derby?
Well, he didn't win the Wood Memorial, but Funnyside ran in it and then won the Derby in 2003. I think the last winner would have been Who's Pegasus.
That's correct, 2000.
Right?
So it's been a quarter century since the winner of the Wood in a full 22 years at this point, since a Wood runner has won the Kentucky Derby. Of course, Who's Pegasus, a very expensive runner in the Kentucky Derby, but hey, turned out to be worth it. Let's go ahead and watch the stretch run of the Withers now.
From Surfside Moon, who's in pursuit, has taken fourth. Trying to pick him up as Global Steve is making hard work of it so far in fifth. Then from the back, Omaha, and the trailer Corvus. They approach a quarter mile left to go. Manny Franco, a look over his right shoulder.
You know, we see a lot of times over the last couple of years where the Withers has been a little bit of a surprise result. You remember Uncle Heavy winning last year? This was the favorite coming into the race. He ran like the favorite. He had the long shot come up to him on the outside. He still just kind of dropped and separated himself from the stretch. This was a good-looking win at 1.8 miles, too. You got to love that moving forward.
Surfside Moon is second, but Captain Cook wins the Withers. Captain Cook wins it over Surfside.
There you go. So Surfside Moon gets second there. We'll talk about Surfside Moon in a second here because this is the time of year when once in a while we get to beat a 30-1, 40-1 kind of dog that shows you what they've got, right? And these are young horses. They're still developing, right? We made a joke previously with a former co-host of mine and Mike Andolfo, guy that you've worked with before, that essentially the Derby is the very best high school freshman.
Yeah.
Right. And
exactly.
then they kind of graduate from high school at the end of their 3-year-old season. And then when you get into college athletes, we're talking about forward up, that kind of thing. Right. And so it's interesting to watch these horses as they move. But Captain Cook, that's a style that can win. If you could be a presser, if you could be near the pace and kick away at the end of a race, you could win a lot of races, no matter the style, whether it's a sprint or a route race. Very impressive on Saturday.
Yeah. And you remember the Derby a couple of years ago, that was the style to win the race. You had 5 in a row, California Chrome, American Pharaoh, Nyquist, Always Dreaming, Justified. They all sat that perfect trip right in behind the leaders. He's proven he can do that. I'd like to see, in the future races, getting a little bit of dirt kicked back in his face and see how he responds to that. He makes the run a mile and an eighth. You can't really fault that for being, a performance there. That's definitely something to do.
We see that Remsen in December obviously was one of the key races. We've seen this year the Springboard Mile. Seems to be one of those key races. But we saw many horses come out of Aqueduct really well last year. The Dornans of the world, the Sierra Leones of the world, the domestic products of the world all came out of Aqueduct last year. It'll be interesting to see if that is spot for us as we move through this 3-year-old season. I'm Louie Rabaut, Sean Collins hanging out. This is BloodHorse Monday. Obviously, Sean is right in the middle of the Twin Spires. If you were a field goal attempt, you would be good.
I know.
How about that? All right. A little football reference. Why not? All right. So I know people. We're in Kentucky and it's basketball season. I'm very aware. I know. We're not going to talk about Coach Cal. Don't worry. We'll do those things. All right. So the third Derby prep over the weekend was out in Southern California. A guy who's back on the Derby trail. Let's talk about that first. His name is Bob Baffert. Obviously, we saw him here. As you hear the construction noises, we are 3 months away today, 89 days, until they crown someone the Derby champ right here under the Twin Spires.
It's like to do it on site. You got to deal with everything.
Live radio, baby. Let's go. That's exactly right. Yeah. They were like, oh, BloodHorse is coming. Oh, construction right now. All right. So, no, but look, 3 months to the day. Last year, we saw Nysos win this race.
Yeah.
And we all got very excited after the Robert B. Lewis. Obviously, unfortunately, some injury took place there. Great news. He's back on the track and training. Can't wait to see if he's one of those guys. Like, imagine if Nysos gets back to being Nysos and we get this 4-year-old class this year. Yeah. Goodness gracious.
4-year-old class is already pretty good. That would just take it up in another notch. Probably an older horse division we haven't seen in years.
That's right. I mean, even with a lock to his favorite, tough draw, finishes well in the Pegasus. I mean, that class sets up really, really well, including those horses we didn't really get to beat as 3-year-olds. But man, Citizen Bull comes back. And he's essentially locked up a spot in the starting gate if he's
already clinched it.
That's amazing, frankly, talking on February 1st about that kind of thing. This is a classic Baffert as well. Get out front, keep the lead. We saw that in 18 with Justified. We saw that in 15 with American Pharaoh. This is the kind of race where this sets up. I'm going to mention another name that's really interesting. And the story, of course, unfortunately, after the Derby didn't go great, but that was Nyquist. Yeah, wins the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, comes back, wins this race, wins all the races on his way to winning the Santa Anita Derby. And, of course, the Kentucky Derby in 2016. I got to tell you, at this place, man, every journalist in here, you got an undefeated 2-year-old, wins the Kentucky Derby. They were booking New York. I can tell you that, right? And so I'm not saying Citizen Bull is Nyquist. I want to be very clear about that. But it is fun to see the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner bounce back like this. He looked terrific.
Yeah. Definitely. When you have a horse that was so dominant as a 2-year-old and just kind of the way that the race set up for him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, everybody was kind of questioning whether or not, was it just the track, everything like that? But I think he proved yesterday. I know it was a small field. I know he was running against his stablemates, but just the way that he did it, the way he was able to kind of accept some of the pressure from his non-stablemate early and then kick away and be able to hold off the challenges of his stablemate. I just think he looked super professional. He's definitely a leader at this point. He's already got a spot in the gate. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Right. You can sit out to the Santa Anita Derby if you want to. You already know that.
Yeah, you can make the Kentucky Derby the second in the form cycle for him. Frankly, right? Even a third place finish in the Santa Anita Derby, as long as he runs well, can be totally fine. Do you remember who ran second and third at that Nyquist Derby? If my memory serves.
In the Derby.
No, excuse me. Nyquist in the Santa Anita Derby. Excuse me.
Well, he was in the Florida Derby.
Did he run the Florida Derby?
Yeah, it was the Van Vicente.
Oh, that's right, the Van Vicente. That's right. There he came back. But we're getting that kind of performance out of Citizen Bull. Let's go to that replay now of the Robert B. Lewis over the weekend. One of the finest Also, there's a
Bull
Breeders.
opens up 2.5. Rodriguez is now re-rallying on the outside, so he obviously wasn't comfortable, but he is now as he comes after Citizen Bull at the top of the stretch. Manicat Road is down at the rail. 3/16 of a mile to go. Citizen Bull still in control. Manicat Road trying to get into second, past the furlong pole, and Citizen Bull better than ever coming to the 16th pole. He is back in a big way. Citizen Bull leads them all the way.
As soon as pressure showed
Another
up,
Robert B. Lewis for Bob Baffert.
Embarrassed the field.
Another great run for another Baffert trainee. Did you see the little hip shimmy from Baffert after the race?
No, I did not. I missed that.
I don't try to read into what the clues are from trainers, but I think a hip shimmy from Bob Baffert is a thing. I think that's a thing.
You don't get that from every race.
Little hip shimmy.
Yeah, you don't get that out of every race.
Bob Baffert shimmy. I like that. All right, but we saw Barnes here. Obviously, we've got Citizen Bull running on the West Coast. Excuse me. Rodriguez, we still don't know a lot about him. He's only started 3 times.
And there's room to improve.
And frankly, Manicat Road is going to be. He's going to be. Hear me out. Not at the same level likely as, but a Sierra Leone type where because of his running style, races are going to fall apart in front of him at some point. He's going to pick off races. Who do you like amongst that group the most? And is Citizen Bull the obvious choice here?
I think Citizen Bull.
I agree with
you. Choice, yeah. I think I agree with what you're saying with Manicat Road. Santa Anita is not always the most conducive to his running style.
Right, I agree.
So, how many
especially
times,
not this speed. It has been front runners since speed this out.
How many times do you get to a race like the Kentucky Derby, something on that stage where it's the trainer's other horse that wins? So you can't discount these other horses.
Oh, I agree.
I do really want to see Rodriguez come back, get a little clearer trip and see what he's made of there. But
or just 2-turn experience again, right? I mean, and so just get more of that and work these things in. I think next time you see him, look for that little 5-6 work pattern, 5 furlong, 6 furlong for Bob with the past performances. That might be the giveaway with Rodriguez.
Now, the question for you that I have is at the last Derby Future wager was Barnes that closed as the favorite. I believe it was 6-1, something around there. Which of those two do you think right now has the claim to Kentucky Derby favorite at this point?
That's a great question. I think Barnes gets it just because of the hype. I think just because of the hype, everybody just trusts that Baffert's going to stretch these horses out, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Right? And I think we're so reticent to back the 2-year-old champion because we've been burned so many times.
Yeah.
I would guess Barnes is the favorite. And he's done it here.
Yeah,
right? We saw him do it here. So I think people will give him credit for that. But if you're betting against Citizen Bull right now, I got nothing for you. That horse has done nothing wrong.
I would say Citizen Bull is the favorite right now, just purely off the fact Barnes hasn't gone 2 turns yet. I don't have any doubt he's going to once he does, but I need to see it first before I say you're definitively the favorite, especially when we're 3 months away. At this point, the horses are stretching out. If you're going to be the definitive favorite of the race, that's what I need to see from you.
Citizen Bull, of course, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year. Before that, won the American Pharoah Stakes, Grade 1 at Santa Anita, and finished third in the Del Mar Futurity after breaking his maiden in June at Del Mar last year. I think it's setting up that we have an interesting and diverse 3-year-old class. In other words, I think we're going to have a couple at the very top that are going to be trained by the names that we know, and they're going to be amongst those favorites that we're interested in, the Citizen Bulls of the world, the Baffert trainees in general. But I think like an Owen Hardy, a lot of different kind of runners that maybe came off the turf or something, and they're discovering new things about a dirt runner, that kind of stuff. I think there's a chance we've got a real diverse set of runners for this year at Kentucky Derby.
It's shaping up to be an incredible 3-year-old crop. I mean, I went back and I looked at all the prep races that we've had so far. There's not a single horse that's won a prep race where I would say they have no shot of winning the Derby when we get there. How many times do we get to this point where that's the case, especially when you get to this weekend? Like this weekend, the last couple of years, Baffert was suspended, so the Robert B. Lewis really didn't kind of have the impact. Yeah. You had Fierceness get upset in the Holy Bowl. The Withers has been a question mark, as we mentioned. To have 3 legitimate Kentucky Derby contenders coming out of all 3 of these prep races, it's going to set up for a really exciting final couple months. We're 50 points to the winner starting in 2 weeks from now.
That's right.
So it's going to get really exciting.
And 50 points to second place finishers eventually as well, right? So with the 5 spots for all these Derby preps, and we'll see if they can keep the gates full in Southern California as well, just, in an aqueduct and those kinds of things to keep those points up. Of course, the reduced points for smaller fields is part once we get to the championship series.
Doesn't matter the Citizen Bull now, though. He's already in.
That is correct. And that, frankly, I think that's a big step for them. River Thames ran at Gulfstream as well. I thought I would just mention that horse because if he wins the Derby, I would like it to be on film because I thought he looked maybe the best of any 3-year-old outside of Citizen Bull that we saw this weekend. Those 3 winners, though, this weekend, which one was the best? I'll give my nod to Citizen Bull. I think that's a style that wins everywhere.
I got to go with Burnham Square.
Okay.
I just like seeing him do multiple different runs throughout the race. The one question mark that I had was Citizen Bull. And this is a question mark. He could easily break out of the gate in the Derby, just wire the whole field. But it just seems like the last couple of years we've really been seeing, a hot pace in the Kentucky Derby. We haven't really seen him sit off the pace yet and kind of stalk. That's something that I would like to see. I'm not saying he can't do it, but I'd like to see him do it. So right now, I'd say Burnham Square. Just knowing he's versatile, that gives me the nod coming out of this weekend.
All right. Well, you talked to trainer Ron Moquett this morning. He trained one of my favorite horses of both my professional career, just as a fan in Whitmore. I thought he was so cool. I told the story before, 2020 Breeders' Cup. I don't have him in my tickets because it was a front runner's day and Whitmore was just not fast enough to be on the lead with those horses. So he decided to just come from off the pace on a day when it was just a parking lot at Keeneland, and just spectacular run. I stood up and cleared. I had my mask on. It was 2020. There was like 50 of us there. I threw my mask, just stood up. I lost all of my bets, every single one. But Whitmore was that cool that day. How was it with Ron? What'd you guys talk about?
Well, we talked about how Speed King's coming to come out of the race, kind of what his thoughts were on the race and his early thoughts on. Also talked a little bit about his relationship with the owner, Ted Bowman. He's a local guy. He lives about 2 blocks away from Oaklawn Park. He was very emotional in the winner's circle after the race, winning that, and now having a horse possibly for the Arkansas Derby.
And we saw some of those very cool connections with Mystic Dan, some of those Oaklawn folks last year. So maybe we'll get lucky. We'll get that as well. But here is Sean's conversation earlier today with Ron Moquett. We thank him for joining us here on BloodHorse Monday. I'm Louie. He's Sean. We'll see you in about 11 minutes? Yeah, about 11 minutes. There you go.
One day, years from now, people are going to be playing a horse racing trivia game, and the question is going to be, who was the first ever guest on the BloodHorse Monday podcast? And the answer to that is going to be the one and only Ron Moquett, trainer of Southwest Stakes winner, Speed King. Ron, how does it feel to have such an honor to be the first guest on this new show?
It's great. It's an honor to be the first, and in my industry, you want to be the first. So we're happy to say that.
Well, obviously you're on here because of the success of your fantastic 3-year-old colt Speed King after he won the Southwest Stakes and has now put himself in second place on the road to the Kentucky Derby leaderboard with 25 points. It's been a little over a week since that race. Has it settled in yet that you have one of the top Kentucky Derby contenders?
Well, yes, it has, but I know it's a long way, and you got to have a lot of really good nights and days between now and the first Saturday in May. So we're going in there guarded and feeling a little confident that we got a nice horse, but we need the racing gods to keep smiling.
And take me back to that race. He ended up on the lead in there. I think I read you said that wasn't necessarily the game plan, but the other speed didn't break coming out of the gate. So what were your thoughts on his performance, and how do you see him adjusting to the other races coming up?
I was very pleased. I thought Mr. Bejarano did a wonderful job. So many times we have all these laid out plans and they open the gates and then nothing is like you thought it would be. And we thought we'd be sitting second or third and we could relax and go get them, try them down the stretch. And for a teaching thing, and we thought that could be his most efficient way of running. But when we found ourselves on the lead, I was glad that Ralphie made good decisions and the horse was able to, accommodate the situation that we were in. I was very proud of him. He's learning. He's lightly raced, obviously, but he's learning very quickly.
So down the back stretch going into the far turn, he had received quite a bit of pressure, but he was able to separate from that horse and kick away. How much confidence does that give you moving forward into the next couple of races?
Well, as the races go on, they're going to get more contentious and better horses, and you're going to have different obstacles. I was happy to see him handle that pressure and still have enough energy to fight and gallop out good after the stretch. So it only gets tougher from here. So I'm glad to see that it wasn't super easy and that he handled it.
Well, it's been about a week since that race. How is he doing now? How has he come out of the race? And is the next goal going to be the Rebel?
Well, to use a cliche, we'll let the horse tell us. We're going to work the horse in about probably 5 or 6 more days. And our goal ultimately is the Arkansas Derby. I want to win that race at my home track. So whatever gets us to the Arkansas Derby the best and in the best position to win it is what we're going to do. And if that means going to the Rebel, then we're going to do that. But he has to tell us, and then we have to listen.
And I know there's been a lot of hype around this horse in your barn since the very beginning. What signs do you look for as a trainer in a 2-year-old that's just joined your stable that really kind of helps to set them apart and make you know that this is going to be a good one?
Lots of stuff: intelligence, class, the desire to be in front. Obviously they need to stay sound, they need to have ability, but there's a lot of different things that can give you a clue of what you have in your hands.
He ran second in the Springboard Mile, and that ended up being quite a good race because the winner came back and won the Smarty Jones Stakes as well. How did you see him what did you think of that performance? And then how did you see him adjust and grow into the Southwest?
For that to be a second performance of his life, to travel to a new place, to deal with thunderstorms and all the things that you had to deal with, the track was no one that ran on the front end that day hung on for anything. The entire day, it was a weird anomaly where everybody closed and speed faded to get nothing. We did a lot of things for our first time. We took on winners for our first time. We handled a sloppy surface for the first time. We went 2 turns for the first time. We ran at night for the first time. We saw a big billboard real close to the track, which is the screen of the live action for our first time. And all these things he reacted to. Some of it he reacted well, some of it he didn't, but I was really pleased with him overcoming all those things and still being in a position to win. I took nothing from him in that defeat at all, and was even more gratified when I saw how well the horse that beat us come back to run. And now I would like to think that we're in a position to where we've got a little more experience. Maybe if the same thing was to happen, that we would actually perform better.
And he didn't have an easy road leading into the Southwest either. There was quite a bit of training that got canceled at Oaklawn because of the weather. So we might not have even seen his best performance on that day. Would you say that?
Oh, that's surely easy to think. We're all about rhythm and getting into a groove with our horses, and every trainer is. And he basically went to the track 3 times in 16 days, I believe it was. And 2 of them was right the day before the race. So he had the work, and then he did not get to go back to the track until 2 days before the race. And that's not how you want to bring a horse to feel confident about where you're at. But having said that, the top 2 finishers were here stuck at Oaklawn during the ice storm, and the rest of them were out being on normal schedule.
So that definitely shows the depth of the horses that are at Oaklawn this year, going towards the first Saturday in May. But Ron, I want to ask you about your relationship with the owner, Ted Bowman of Triton Thoroughbreds. You two have been together for a long time. You won your first Grade 1 together with Seek Gold and the 2006 Stephen Foster. He's a local guy there in Arkansas. He lives just a couple blocks from the track. What does it mean to you to be bringing him, a longtime client, a longtime friend, along this journey on the path towards the Arkansas Derby and then the Kentucky Derby?
It's rewarding. And, obviously we're very thankful for loyalty in a sport that the trend is not to be. It's the trend, unfortunately, is to go to whoever's hot now. And, that's why we have a lot of horsemen that are going out of business, is because they see on TV one outfit winning all the races, and they forget to use common sense and say, well, they have all the horses, they should be winning all the races. But he's stuck with me. He's been very loyal, and he's been a consistent good owner, from helping me secure my first Grade 1 to now, us doing this together. It's been very rewarding. It's not always been easy, but relationships that are worth doing require work. And in a game that it don't happen often, I'm proud to say that I have a lot of that in my barn, and him being one of the longest, if not the longest.
I remember watching his post-race interview at Oaklawn right after he won the race, and he was getting pretty emotional. What do you think his reaction will be winning the Arkansas Derby if he were to do that?
Well, I'm sure everybody involved will be emotional. It's not a corporate mindset the way we operate. So we operate on passion, hard work, and demanding that we put ourselves in a lucky position. So we're not, no offense to Mr. Baffert or Pletcher or Brown or Cox or any of the other guys. We don't have a stable full of horses that are supposed to get to the Kentucky Derby every year. We try to help our horses reach their potential. And if we can do that and we're lucky enough to get to the Derby, it's obviously going to mean more, be more emotional, be more gratifying to us than it would be to somebody that thinks that they're supposed to be there every year.
And speaking of the Derby, today is 3 months until Kentucky Derby Day. So when you're looking at the next 3 months, how do you balance, you obviously want to win the big purse money that's offered in the Rebel and the Arkansas Derby. You need to make sure you get probably at least 20 more points to make sure you get into the Kentucky Derby. And then obviously you want the horse to perform his best on Kentucky Derby Day itself. How do you balance trying to make sure you give yourself the best shot at all three of those things?
My job is simple. We can make it as hard as we want, but my job is simple. Wake up every day, look at your horse, making good decisions, what's best for your horse. And I can get caught up really easy about saying, well, we got to do this, but our job is just to listen to the horse and do what's right. And he'll tell us, and if it's meant for him to be in the Derby and perform well, then we will. And we'll take every little hint he gives us to put him in the proper position. I know that, I want to make sure I make as much money for my clients when we have the opportunity, and the purse structure is lucrative, especially here. So would we like to leave Hot Springs, Arkansas with a pocket full of money? Obviously, but our job, irregardless, is to take care of our horse and try to do the very best with it. So I just leave all that up to, we'll look at him in the morning and see what we need to do then.
And you've been down this road before. You've had a couple of contenders in the Derby, Far Right in 2015. Whitmore, your champion sprinter, was in the Derby in 2016. King Russell just 2 years ago. Does having that experience of being down this road, does that help you going into this year?
Sean, I said forever, everywhere I've been has been on the back of a horse in this industry. Everywhere, everything I've ever learned has been taught to me by something that happened earlier. So Far Right taught me a lot. Whitmore taught me more. King Russell showed me some things, and I'm still learning today. So yes, thank goodness for those horses, because I feel a little more confident about things I should do and things I probably shouldn't steer away from. So we're learning daily, and I'm very thankful that I've had those opportunities to give me a little bit of a leg up, as you say.
All right. Well, hopefully that'll all lead to you being part of the Kentucky Derby starting gate on the first Saturday in May. Hopefully that gives you your best opportunity to go out there and try to win the roses. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast, Ron, and best of luck the rest of the way to you, your team, the owners, and to Speed King himself.
Thanks, Sean. And anytime I can help, I appreciate, I got a lot of respect for the work you do and the passion with which you do it. So if I can ever help in any way, be sure to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron. Take care.
Thanks.
Appreciate him joining us here on BloodHorse Monday. You know what I don't like, though? He was nice to you at the end of that interview. I know. I don't need that kind of positivity on this show. I don't need that stuff around here.
No, he's the only one.
He's the list. That's right. Your little black book is Ron Moquett. Yeah. Cool interview. People say profound things once in a while, and I think they don't realize they're saying something incredibly profound. And at the end of that interview, he said, everywhere I've been is on the back of a horse. Yeah. And I really hope on this show that we get to talk about those things and really celebrate our equine athletes that way going forward, because it's so obvious when you get to talk to people in this industry. You and I are here at Churchill Downs, and we'll be here someday on Derby week at 4:45 in the morning, and we won't be close to the first person here. No, right? And the other side of this track, the other side of those Twin Spires, which you see on the screen with us right now, on the backside, there's a small city-state, an ecosystem going on at every single racetrack in America. And guys like Ron are part of it, right? Part of that cog in that machine that we kind of probably almost certainly take for granted. Now, you and I are lucky we get to go see those things if we want to, right? We get to go celebrate those moments. And so it's great to have Ron on. That's such a profound thing to say, though. And he said it so naturally. It's so beautiful, right? Yeah. So I didn't want that to kind of slip through. What else stood out to you as part of that interview? I think he's pretty high in Speed King, man.
He's very high in Speed King, and I had heard some talk from his son before the Southwest. Unfortunately, I did not turn that into betting. I should have taken that tip, and I should have put some money down.
Yeah, if you bet on him, he finishes fifth. Yeah,
they've been really high on this horse, and that Springboard Mile. Talk about
that's the race, man.
An important race. Right. Both those top two coming back, winning at Oaklawn on the Derby Trail.
It's a nice reminder. Pay attention to everything. You never know where those horses are going to come from, especially in the modern era where so many people are doing a better job of putting their horses at different tracks, right? And Asmussen's been going to the mile for years, but other people are realizing Remington's a good place to land with your 3-year-old, right?
You never know where a Derby horse can come from.
Oh, that's right.
Speed King, he's Kentucky bred, but he grew up. Part of his early days as a foal was in North Carolina with his breeder Nancy Schufert.
Yeah.
And so I got to talk to her. Did an article with her a couple of weeks ago, and you never know where that Derby horse is going to come from. It's great to see everybody involved with this horse, from owner, trainer, jockey, breeder, everybody involved. It's really easy to root for, which is great to see.
All right, someone else who's easy to root for is Frank Angst, editorial director down there at BloodHorse.com. We welcome him in for what we hope will be a very, very common occurrence of joining us here on the podcast. Oh, we're going to have to lean in. Get in here, Sean. Let's make this a romantic show for a day. Frank Angst, how are you?
Hi, Louie. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Frank.
How's the weather? Is it beautiful there, too? Are you in a library, Frank? You can get outside. It's all right.
I just lost you there.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I lost the audio there for a bit, guys.
Oh, okay. Let me work on your stuff here, Frank, as we get used to doing this show. Mic settings. See if we can get here.
Yeah, I'm hearing you now.
That way. Does that sound better? There we go. Clicked on something there. You just heard the interview with Ron Moquett down there at Oaklawn. Obviously, we've had a series of 20-point preps, 3 of them this past weekend as well. We'll get into Citizen Bowl with you in just a second. But anybody stand out so far to Frank Angst?
Well, Speed King was my number 1 horse on my initial NTRA poll. I voted in that poll.
Yep.
I really like the progression of that horse. Probably was a bit biased because I did all right at the windows on that horse.
Never hurts.
But, there's some question on the breeding and they'll be able to handle a 1.25 miles, but we'll see. But in terms of impressive outings, that had been the most impressive outing that I've seen from this generation. This week I did vote for Citizen Bull because he's the champion, and now as of Saturday he's a winner at 3, so that's enough for me to move him to that number 1 spot. But yeah, both terrific horses. We wrote about we looked at Citizen Bull coming into this week in a column that I have. It's called The Road. Myself and Byron King, we combine on that. We just kind of look at trends on the path to the Derby, and it's certainly going to be an exciting year. Anytime that juvenile winner, in this case also the champion, comes back at 3 and is clearly himself and progressing, and that doesn't always happen. Quite a few years it doesn't, and it usually shows itself right away. If they're going to be a contender at 3, they usually come right out in that first race and show it, and we certainly saw that Saturday. Both juvenile winners to go on to win the Derby both won their initial starts.
Okay.
Nyquist and Street Sense. Street Sense started a little bit later in the year in the Tampa Bay Derby, but he got it done, and Nyquist started mid-February at Santa Anita and went on to win the Derby.
Yeah, we talked about Nyquist earlier in the show, actually, as when he wins the Derby and he's the undefeated 2-year-old champ, everybody's booking New York, that kind of thing, and horse racing has its ways for sure. But Citizen Bull coming back, Frank, and I know you're working on some stuff for BloodHorse.com as well. Of course, Frank Angst with us here on BloodHorse Monday. He's the editorial director there at BloodHorse.com and magazine and all the things. BloodHorse Daily, if you haven't checked us out, come check us out over at BloodHorse.com. What is it that stands out about Citizen Bull, other than, of course, being the 2-year-old champ, being a BAPR trainee? What do you think stands out about him?
I mean, he has that dominating speed, and it fits in with the style of 3-year-olds that Bob has won the Derby with. Authentic went gate to wire. Medina Spirit ultimately came down, but went gate to wire. Yeah, I mean, most of his winners of the Derby have gone gate to wire. Justify, as you mentioned. American Pharaoh came a little bit off the pace, and Real Quiet, of course, was a deep closer, but he's had success. And a lot of trainers struggle with that front ender in the Derby, but Bob's had a lot of success with it.
Yeah, he seems to rate really well with his horses that way. You know, River Thames ran on Saturday at Gulfstream Park as well for Todd Pletcher. I thought he looked really good. Of other horses that ran on those days, maybe finished second, maybe a Rodriguez or something else. Did anyone else kind of catch your eye, Frank?
The horse at Gulfstream, Burnham, is it Burnham Street?
Yep.
Yeah, I liked how that horse. I thought that horse overcame some trouble, which is always a nice thing for a young horse to show that ability. And the Derby's certainly capable of presenting some problems. I don't think any 3-year-old's going to overcome like massively getting slammed or something. But the horse showed some ability that he's not going to shy away from horses or give up over a few problems. So that was encouraging for sure.
You know, in recent years, the Santa Anita Derby, the Florida Derby are excellent predictors for success in the Kentucky Derby. Obviously, we've even had a couple good runs from, you know, a 2 fills or a Rich Strike out of a Turfway. Do you look for those sorts of things, for example, with the Captain Cook running at Aqueduct? Do you hold that against him since it's been so long since we've had a Wood Memorial horse win the Derby? Or is that just a, you know, it happens to be
think, I try to consider who looks like the best horse and most suitable.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable time.
I mean, the one thing I will say about this weekend's races is, unfortunately, all 3 races were small fields. Citizen Bull really had his way. You know, he didn't steal the race by any means. He was definitely quick.
He was the best horse, for sure,
and was pushed along early. And they tried to challenge him late, but he kept going. So, and he looked like a horse that needed to run. You can see why they got him out on the track to get a race in him. I suspect he'll be even sharper next time. I thought, you know, he wanted to go. So he certainly probably burned more energy early than he will in his next race. I think he'll probably be more within himself. So that's very encouraging for him. But no, the tracks, try to consider every track. The trainers are trying to put their horses in the best spots to progress that horse. So I don't see any special, you want to start with the biggest tracks. That's usually where they're at, but they can come from any track and circuit.
Yeah, we had, we have Captain Cook win and like a Surfside Moon finishes second, that kind of stuff. I'm always looking for that horse who has the really great kick at the end of a race, try to set up for the next one. And so Captain Cook sort of stood out that way. But as we look on the breeding side, and you mentioned, hey, who's going to get 10 furlongs here? Who's going to be good at that? Was there a sire that you thought had a great weekend?
Yeah, I thought one thing we could do on this podcast is recognize some of the top sires in the country. And really all along, our first issue of, or not our first issue, this is our first podcast, but
yes,
our February issue of BloodHorse looks at the leading stallions of 2024. Yep. And for the 6th time, just really an incredible run, Into Mischief is at the top of that list. So I thought I was going to highlight him based on that. Well, then he goes and has Citizen Bull win at Santa Anita. And he also takes down the forward gal.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, good call.
Yeah, Eclatante. So just a huge weekend for him anyway. So he wins it on career and he wins it on the weekend. So, you know, he's getting it done. He's trying to have his 3rd Derby winner since 2020. The first 2 have kind of had some oddities in that, you know, he had one horse put up after Medina Spirit was taken down, and then Authentic won in the COVID year. So it was not in May. So, they all count though, but I'm sure that all the connections would love to have one that they can celebrate immediately in May, not September.
The good news is Into Mischief photographs really well. So if you're doing anything with photos, he's going to look great. I mean, he's got great hair. I don't. It's a whole thing, Frank.
And Bob Baffert, of course, was the trainer of Authentic, so he's already won with one Into Mischief.
Yeah.
Besides Citizen Bull, he also has Barnes. So he's got 2 really nice Into Mischiefs this year. And now it looks like there's a nice filly. There's a few others too that have been stakes placed that we need to keep an eye on. Well, Sovereignty won the Streets End at Churchill Downs. So Into Mischief is looking strong again for this year.
And on the Oak side of things, you and I really haven't gotten into the Philly side of things. You mentioned Abutan in that board gal. Of course, they'll stretch out to the mile and then to the mile and an eighth, or a mile and 16th, excuse me, when they get to the Florida Oaks, the Gulfstream Park Oaks, excuse me, eventually. Is there anyone on the Oak side now, of course, that we lost Immersive from for this, a couple months here? She'll be back in the summer. Last time I talked with Trader Brad Cox, he was essentially aiming for those stakes up at Saratoga as part of their program. Anyone stand out on the Oaks Trail?
Yeah, that one I'm going to have to dig into a bit deeper, Louie. I haven't formed a strong opinion on that yet.
Yeah, okay.
It's definitely seen some talented fillies to this point.
Yeah, I think on Bhutan, if she can stretch out, and we watch Brad Cox do this every freaking year, right? He puts together a great stretch out season. I think she's one of those we'll be watching for sure. What else is Frank Angst working on at BloodHorse?
Kind of so we also have a dollars and cents column in the BloodHorse Daily, our newsletter that comes out each day. And with it being Super Bowl week, I thought I'd have a little fun. I was reading a book called The League earlier this autumn, and it highlights 5 gentlemen who really shaped the early NFL. And we're talking about very initial years, basically 100 years ago at this point. And 3 of them were big-time bettors who loved betting on horse races. Ben Bell, and it ties in with the Super Bowl because he went on to own the Eagles. He was kind of a black sheep of a well-off family in Philadelphia, and he definitely enjoyed his trips to Saratoga, and actually didn't do so well there. Tim Mara is a bookmaker in New York, and he would travel to Saratoga each year, and he did well enough that he purchased the New York Giants, and his family still owns the Giants. And the third is Art Rooney Sr., and he was possibly the most successful bettor of that decade. And one day at Saratoga, he cleared $100,000, which would be like almost $3 million in today's money. Wow. And there were stories on him and everything on how he was a celebrated, just from the betting side, to not at that point own horses, but with some of that windfall, he bought the Steelers. Not that the NFL teams were, I mean, they were $2,500, which would be a lot more money than it sounds, but it was still not a huge amount, as the league was really unestablished at that point. And the guys that bought in were very much gamblers, gambling spirit, for sure. So that fit right into what they were doing with their fun time.
I mean, Cripes, my Detroit Lions were playing in Portsmouth, Ohio. How about that? At that time, that's where they were. And so I'm not surprised to hear that $2,500 feature.
Very familiar with the Portsmouth Spartans. I worked there for 3 years. And,
did you? That stadium is still there, I've heard.
Stadium's still there. The public high school and the Catholic school, the Catholic school is really small. They both used it when I was there. The public school has since built a new stadium, but the Catholic school still uses it. Portsmouth Notre Dame, I believe.
That's wild. All right. Well, he is Frank Angst. We're going to check in with him a lot on this show, of course. BloodHorse.com for everything that Frank is working on, dollars and cents, Sire Watch, all of those things. Frank, we appreciate you, buddy. We'll talk to you really soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks. There you go. Frank Angst joins us here on BloodHorse Monday. Sean Collins, Louie Rabaut, Twin Spires. We got all of it here. Frank Angst on a Monday. You like that?
Yes, I do.
All right. Okay. A little closer to the mic there. How about that, Sean?
Yep. Yes, I do.
All right. Well, good. So, look, talk through a lot of things, and he's right. So a couple of things are going on in our sport right now, on the breeding side especially, that are legitimately unprecedented. The run Into Mischief is on as far as a stakes sire for a half decade is insane. I mean, it's legitimately incredible.
And he's the only stallion, too, to ever sire consecutive Derby winners, I'm pretty sure, between Authentic and Mandaloo. So, that in itself tells you that he's a historic sire. Yeah. The run he's on right now, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure there maybe 20 years from now we'll see another sire, but I feel like this is something. He's on a historic run that we might not see.
So, by the way, I have to imagine something Frank said. Many of you listening are wondering about, which is, well, Fierceness didn't come back in his debut as a 3-year-old very well, but still ran really well that year. Go read the article. Frank outlines all of that. It talks about actually historically overall, you do want to bounce back well when you first make your run. Actually, Fierceness is an outlier with those things. So it's a really cool article. Go check it out at bloodhorse.com. Frank does a great job over there as well. The thing with Into Mischief being a half decade is it lines up with Godolphin being breeder and owner for a half decade at the Eclipse Awards. Extraordinarily unusual as well. An incredible run we're seeing for both of those groups. I mean, Into Mischief and then with Godolphin. Just an incredible run.
it has been an incredible run, and Godolphin's loaded right now too.
And you got to vote the Eclipse Awards. Right, and so like the Eclipse, they win the Eclipse Award there, right? I mean, probably the easiest bonus for Godolphin. Yeah, right. Yeah.
But they're loaded going into the Derby, First Resort, Sovereignty, Poster. They are, and on the Oak side too. They lost Immersive, but they still have a couple of good fillies there and good cheer. Yeah. So don't be surprised if you see them getting that award again.
Sets up really well. Of course, we'll wrap the show here, Sean, and this is with what we're looking forward to. Obviously, BloodHorse.com, if you're ever wondering what's going on in the sport, the stakes calendar at BloodHorse.com is the easiest resource around. It's unbelievable. It's a great aggregation of what's going on in our sport at the highest level, especially when you get to those Friday, Saturday, Sundays, want to know what's going on as far as your bet. We head to Tampa Bay this weekend for both I learned that. So I've called it the Davis for years. The guys that say, okay, maybe not the guys, but JCP, okay, these three is trying to get people to call it the Sam.
The Sam.
I like that a lot. Here's what I need. Where's the camera? There it is. All right, Tampa Bay people. I need a hat that just says the Sam. Do you understand me? Give me a hat. I'll wear it on this ridiculous show. We'll get that together for you. I need the Sam hat. These are things.
Give me one too. I'll take one of those.
This guy owns more hats than he has words in a day.
It's surprising that I'm not wearing one right now.
I'm stunned you didn't wear a hat. But looking forward to the Sam F. Davis. Some names that we know. And you just mentioned that Poster's in this race. We saw him. Frank just mentioned him as well. Owen Almighty is going to try to rebound from what was a subpar performance last out at Tampa. Naughty Rascal gets back into this race. A fortunate winner of the race last time out. Who are you looking for this weekend? I think, frankly, an underrated thing is the route to the Derby through Tampa, because usually it's a leap. It's a stepping stone to another prep, right? Because the Sam is the lead-in, of course, to the Tampa Bay Derby, which is a 50-point prep. This is a 20-point prep this weekend. Who stands out in this?
Well, I really want to see how Poster comes back. For a start, we just mentioned the run Godolphin's been on. He's the first one of those trio of Godolphin horses that I mentioned make their 3-year-old debut. So it'll be really interesting to see, how he, he was so impressive in the Remsen last time, going that mile and an eighth. He has gotten back now, mile and a 16th. So it'll be interesting to see, kind of stretching out and then cutting back. He's probably the first horse we're going to see do that on the Derby Trail. But I've always been a big fan of Owen Almighty since he won that race down at Ellis last year. I know he got sick during the fall. They had to stop on him. He had a good comeback race last time out. Just that awkward moment going into the turn where that other horse got a little too close and then checked out of there. Not sure if that was really Owen Almighty's fault, whether it was the other horse's fault, whether it was just happenstance, but I think it was the right call to disqualify him from that performance.
Probably.
But he still stayed on strong after that, crossed the wire first. I really want to see how he's going to run at these longer distances. I believe that one in the Pasco Stakes, I believe, was 7 furlongs. So I want to see how he's going to stretch out to these two turns here. I think it's his first time doing that. But Naughty Rascal was right with him the whole way during that. And he was kind of the one that put that pressure on to force that move early that eventually led to the disqualification. So,
by the way, you're right. I should mention, disappointing because of the DQ, right? Yeah. That he did drift in. When he did. I agree with you, by the way. I think it was a good DQ. I think it was a reasonable DQ for what did happen.
And even Brian Lynch, the trainer, told me it was a good DQ after the race.
Well, there you go.
If the trainer says it's a good DQ, it's a good DQ.
Well, the other part is the horse ran well enough that he knows at least he's going to be fit.
Yeah,
in his 3-year-old, the start of his 3-year-old.
And that was the big thing. When I talked to Brian Lynch immediately after that race, I called him right after. And one of the things that he told me was we didn't really care about the fact he got disqualified. We were just happy that he came back off that long layoff, came back with his illness in as good shape as he was. So if he continues to build off that now, second start off the layoff, we're going to see, an even fitter horse, an even better horse coming up here on Saturday.
Owen Almighty, of course, was the second place finisher in the Iroquois Stakes here at Churchill, the first race on the road to Kentucky Derby 151, came back well. As Sean mentioned, a long layoff, frankly, going into that Pasco Stakes, and does finish technically fifth, but of course, crossed the wire first in that one. Poster comes in. I want to talk a little bit about Poster just because I get to do a local sports show here. I get to interview coaches, and every time I interview coaches, I always ask, what's more important, your X's and O's or your Jimmys and Joes? And so when I interview trainers, I always ask, what's more important, how you run your barn or having great horses? Not a single trainer, not one, has ever said, oh, yeah, me. Not one. You heard it earlier from Ron Moquett. Everywhere I've gotten is on the back of the horse. Owen Hardy, we all know he's a good trainer. And now all of a sudden he's getting sons of Munnings, out of mares by Tepic, right? And then, stunner, he's winning these kinds of races, right? And so it's nice to see these other names on these past performances.
You have Baffert loaded this year. You know, Pletcher's going to come up with something. You know, Brad Cox has quite a few horses. Chad Brown, they'll all find horses. But right now, one of the stories, you know, Baffert's winning everything out west, but one of the stories out here on the east side is that there's a lot of different trainers that are being represented, guys that you don't usually see on the Derby trail. It only makes it more fun.
There you go. Well, anyone else, maybe a Suncoast contender, anything else that you're looking at as we get into the weekend here? Because I'm like Frank, I'm still really getting to know the Oaks contenders. One of the more difficult parts of the Oaks series is that many of the Ford Gal was 7 furlongs.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're still getting to know some of these fillies if they're going to be able to stretch out, whatever it might be. But, you know, for example, like Tenma over the weekend, I thought she did nothing wrong as far as
that was impressive.
Right. And now I get it. Again, we're dealing with, you know, scratches and 3-horse races out at Santa Anita. I'm with Frank. I wish there were more horses in that race, but frankly, I think she did everything we wanted to see.
And she essentially went into a match race the first half of the race. She came out stronger and was still pulling away at the end of the race. So, you know, it's about how you do it. It doesn't really necessarily have to do with who's behind you. Obviously, you want to see good horses behind you, and you want to see a lot of horses behind you. But she can't control who scratches out of that race. She can only go out there and run, and she ran to perfection yesterday. And Baffert said after the race, she's still maturing. So she's figuring it out right now. He skipped the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies with her because he didn't feel like she was mature enough yet. That could have been the right move. And so she's looking like a big threat. One of the ones I'm looking forward to this weekend, I believe I saw that Vacara, the Pocahontas winner, is pointing towards the Suncoast Stakes here at Tampa. Last time out, she ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. So I just want to see how she bounces back on that.
Of course, we have Running Away, who's won a 20-point prep up at New York. Simply Joking, of course, for Whit Beckman, I think has made a very strong impression at the fairgrounds to this point. Starts her in maiden race in a stakes race. Goes ahead, wins off the pace, over 6 furlongs, come back, gets the lead, puts everybody away in that Silver Bullet Day down there. We watched Whit Beckman guide Honor Marie to the Derby last year, maximize everything out of that horse. I would love to see him come back and do that. And wait, if it's on the first Friday, May with Simply Joking, excuse me, I'm here for that too.
I love to see him come back the very next year with multiple horses pointing towards the Kentucky Oaks. I believe he has Her Laugh as well. That's pointing there, you know, joking names. We got a couple of them. We seem to have a theme there with his horses. But that's going to be, you know, it's just nice to see him come back the very next year. He's going to be a trainer that we're going to hear from a lot.
I agree. I think he's one of those guys. If you were buying stock on trainers, you're buying Whit Beckman stock, right? That's a stock. Now, you want a dividend stock, you go get the Baffert stock, the Brown stock, the Pletcher stock, the Cox stock, whatever it is.
You want to get on it before it turns profitable.
If you want it before it's that, yes, that's exactly right. Go grab his stuff as well. So, you know, we talked about Eclatant winning over the weekend. You know, Cox also has Good Cheer here as well. Either of those horses stand out more to you? I think people are a little more on Good Cheer, Frank.
Yeah, I'm more on Good Cheer. First of all, Good Cheer beat Eclatant last time they met in Goldenrod. And so I think Good Cheer, from what I saw as a 2-year-old, I have to kind of bite my tongue a little bit because I said the same thing with Hoosier Philly a couple of years ago and it didn't pan out. But with what I saw as a 2-year-old last year from her, I would not be opposed to seeing her take a shot against the boys in the Kentucky Derby. I think she's good enough for that. So if I think she's good enough for that, I clearly think she's probably the horse to beat right now for the Oaks. You never know what's going to happen, especially with the fillies as they go from 2 to 3. So we'll see what ends up happening with her. But her and Cox's other horse, Bohema, they both look like they're going to be legit horses. Cox is loaded. He lost to Mercer, but he is loaded on the Oaks Trail. I'd say there's a very strong possibility Oaks winners coming from his barn.
I felt good for Manny Franco over the weekend getting a win in a Derby prep because he did lose the Mercers. Out on a Mercer, at least for the Oaks. You know,
makes up for a little bit.
It does just a little. But no, when you watch guys, you know, I mentioned Edgar Myers earlier in the year. Manny's one of those guys just on right there all the time, and that's his life. And so you root for those guys that are mainstays, where they are. Sean Collins, Louie Rabaut, Twin Spires, Churchill Downs, all the things here on BloodHorse Monday as we wrap up the show. What did we not get to today, Sean, that you'd like to get to, or is there something this week that you're looking forward to especially?
Well, I think one of the big things is right now up there in Lexington, we currently have the Fasig-Tipton Kentucky Winter Mix Sale going on.
This is an interesting little twist to the show.
It's an interesting twist. We just talked to Ron Moquett earlier about Speed King. Well, Speed King's dam, the Canadian Beauty, is in that sale. She was supplemented into that sale, so I'm interested to see what she goes for, you know, taking advantage of the big performance of Speed King this past weekend and seeing what she brings. If you want to follow along with that, you just go on to BloodHorse. Later on today, our sales editor, Olivia Newman, is there at the sale covering it. So you can catch the news from her. You can read it in the BloodHorse Daily, whether that be tonight or tomorrow morning. So make sure you keep an eye out for that.
Well, there you go. Well, this has been episode 1 of BloodHorse Monday.
I think we did all right.
We spoke English the entire time, so that works out very, very, very well. He's Sean Collins. I'm Louie Rabaut. I haven't mentioned it. I'm at Radio Louie on socials if you are interested, of course, at BloodHorse for everything that we do around the station. How do people find you on socials?
Well, on social media, you can follow me BH_S Collins. Yep. That's my Twitter account for BloodHorse. You can also find me on YouTube at AFaro12. That's my YouTube channel where I go to a lot of
this show will go up on that as well. So, yep.
And then just keep checking for me on BloodHorse. If you want to read specifically what I'm doing, you just type in my name and then BloodHorse, and it'll pop up for you on Google. Otherwise, just keep an eye on the website. I make it to a lot of different places, talk to a lot of different people, so usually get some good insight.
There you go. We'll be doing the show live going forward, and so if you would like to comment during the show, we can even put your comments on the screen during the show. We'd love to hear from you as part of it. For Sean, I'm Louie. Thanks so much for joining us here on the inaugural edition of BloodHorse Monday. We'll be back next week, and we hope you are too. Have a great week, everybody.
The Hall of Famer. His name is Dan Issel, Barry Spears, John Lindo. Our friend Steve Kornacki